Thank you for joining me today for a really interesting discussion with a rather illustrious team of people that are working on Kubernetes and databases. So we're going to have a good discussion today about, Kubernetes and its use in databases, data storage. So I have a really interesting team here with me, and let's start with quick presentations. Why don't we start with Gabriele?
Hi, Marc. Hi, everyone. And thanks for having me here. I'm Gabriele. I'm VP of Kubernetes at EDB, and I've been working with Postgres for 25 years. And for the last 5, my mission has been to bring Postgres into Kubernetes. I'm one of the founders and maintainers of CloudNativePG, as well as a Postgres contributor. So I'm really happy to be here and talk about running Postgres and databases in general in Kubernetes.
Melissa?
Hi, my name is Melissa Logan. I'm the director of the Data on Kubernetes community. We have been in existence since 2020, trying to help practitioners figure out best practices for running data and stateful workloads on Kubernetes.
Thank you. Piotr?
Hi, Piotr Godowski. I'm senior architect at IBM, part of the IBM containerized software platform architecture. We thank you for having me. And have an opportunity to talk to this fabulous team. And we heavily use EDB as part of our embedded database in our containerized software running on Kubernetes and OpenShift. And I'm happy to be here and spend some time together.
Great. And Xing, please.
Hi, my name is Xing. I work at VMware by Broadcom in the Cloud Native Storage team. I'm also a co-chair of CNCF Tech Storage and Kubernetes 6 Storage. I have been working with the DOK community for a while. Very glad to be here.
Thank you, Xiang. All right, so let's go through a number of questions, and I want to start with the hottest topic I think that's going to be on every DBA's mind. Like, where are we with Kubernetes and databases? Is Kubernetes something for databases today? And Melissa, you're probably the one chomping at the bit to answer.
Yes, we've been hearing this question quite a lot for the past several years. And the answer in a short way is yes. Kubernetes and databases go really well together. This wasn't always the case, as many know. Of course, it didn't start out that you could run stateful workloads in Kubernetes, but now you can, thanks to work of Xing and many, many others, in fact, that have made this possible, the work in the storage SIG and so forth. And when we ran one of our first surveys in 2021 in the Data and Kubernetes community, asking at that point, is Kubernetes ready for stateful? And 90% of people at that time, which surprised us, said yes. There were still many challenges they illuminated in the survey. Operators was one of them. Operators were inconsistent. They were not always, they didn't always deliver all the features that people wanted for day 2 operations. But that has improved significantly in the past 3-4 years. And I'll say that at the first few KubeCons that we went to as the Data on Kubernetes community, people were asking, well, should we put databases on Kubernetes? Is this possible? Should we even be thinking about this? And the answer now that we hear in the most recent KubeCon has been a yes. Now people are not even asking, should we do this? They're saying, how do we do this? And how do we do this securely and safely? So we've seen this huge arc in the past 4 or 5 years that we've been running this community in terms of interest in doing this. And now people are absolutely doing this. And in the Data and Kubernetes community, we've been showcasing a lot of end users who are sharing exactly how they do this too. So we've had folks from Etsy, Chick-fil-A, Dish Network, Grab, which is like the DoorDash of Singapore, many others come on and actually share how they're doing this really safely and securely. So the short answer is definitely yes, this is possible and people are doing this. And the improvements that continue to be made are just making this easier and easier for people.
Great. I think that's exciting. And you're saying they're running databases in Kubernetes in production today.
Yes, in production, absolutely.
That's fantastic news, and that's really what we want folks to encourage to do. So, Jinyang, if we look at where we are now and where we're going forward with AI and ML, what's the role? How's that going to play out?
Looking forward, I think in terms of AI machine learning, of course, it has different set of requirements compared to before. So the AI machine learning workloads contains a large amount of structured and unstructured data, and the workloads need to be highly scalable, and they need database to auto-scale and adapt to the changing workloads. So we need to be able to allocate resources dynamically and efficiently. These workloads also need to be highly performant with low latency, and typically they need to be read-only access to the data. So all of this have different implications for running databases in Kubernetes. So in SIG storage, we have been doing a lot of work trying to make sure that we can meet those requirements, and also make sure that Kubernetes is able to handle current workloads and also future workloads. So some of the work that we are doing, for example, in the data protection working group, we are adding the CPT support, change block tracking support, which is very important for backup restore, for efficient backup restore. So that allow you to be able to retrieve the change blocks between two snapshots, not have to read the entire volume. So that's something that we are working on. And the other feature that we are working on is volume group snapshot feature. So I'm leading that feature that allow you to take a snapshot of multiple volumes at the same point in time. So that feature is currently alpha. We are trying to move it to beta in Kubernetes 1.32 release. And we have actually Leonardo from EDB have been helping with that effort. So he has been helping with testing, with bug fixing, code reviews, and all of that. So we really appreciate his effort.
Great. Well, that's a fantastic evolution because, Gabriele, I remember, I think in 2021 and 2022, there was a big effort, right, on our side and your side, especially coming from Second Quadrant, to enable the use of Postgres in Kubernetes, right? So tell us a little bit the story of what happened since the open sourcing in 2022.
Yeah. So I mean, it happened something. I'm being honest, unpredictable back then. I could only wish it would go this way back then. But I also have to thank my dear Simon Riggs, who in 2019 he actually put me in charge at Second Quadrant of this initiative. And again, his vision back then was what we see now, basically. So when we open sourced CloudNativePG, which was already in production, for example, at IBM, as Piotr probably will mention later, we didn't expect certainly to see the adoption increase so much and steadily to the point that now, in terms of GitHub stars, is certainly the fastest growing operator, but at the moment is second to the Zalando operator with over 4,000 stars. And if you think that when we started, the Crunchy operator was the leader in terms of stars, and now we're past that, it's a big achievement for us, especially because we took a completely different and fundamental decision back then, which was to be entirely declarative and not to rely, for example, on a failover manager like Patroni, which, as you know, is very well used within the Postgres community. But we actually decided, coming from rep manager environment, to put that logic directly into Kubernetes. So teach Kubernetes how to handle a Postgres cluster was, in my opinion, the best decision we could make back then, followed by managing directly persistent volume claims instead of using stateful sets. which, as I see, it's probably a temporary phase because we hope to provide feedback to the Kubernetes storage to improve stateful sets in the long term. But managing PVCs, for example, allowed us to implement volume snapshot backup for recovery, and we worked with Xing on that to the point that now the operator is about to support the beta feature for volume group snapshots, probably the first operator of a database to do it. So we're really happy to actually have this synergy with the Kubernetes community. I think it's the biggest differentiator in general is that we do not bring Kubernetes to Postgres, but we're actually trying to bring Postgres into Kubernetes and integrate it with the ecosystem and the community back there. And we hope to apply again for the CNCF sandbox so that this project becomes property of the CNCF, and so that it becomes it streamlines the deployment of Postgres databases in general in Kubernetes for the future. So it's been an amazing journey so far, and it's incredible, to see the adoption and the increasing number of, for example, even documents and blog articles all around the world about this operator in general.
Yeah, I think, and this decision to leverage the Kubernetes services instead of building a layer on top of Kubernetes was essential and is really important. And maybe in the first couple of months, first iterations, it was slowed things down a little bit, which we saw with the high adoption of the Crunchy operator initially. But now it's just a lot less moving parts. It's just much more native than anything that would have built a layer in there. So I'm excited about the fact that you took that decision at the time and that it appears to work really, really well. So, Peter, when we look now at, I think you're coming more from the user side and getting actual mileage out of it. So tell us a little bit about, how you're using it, what you're doing with it, and how this is working out for you.
Sure. As Gabriele mentioned and you alluded to, I represent IBM, where we are consuming EDB Postgres for quite a while, much more before it was open sourced. So to some extent, we can say we are veteran adopters or users, and we collaborated and we have a great partnership to improve the technology. The way how we use it is that we put EDB Postgres as embedded database into our containerized software offerings, which are customer managed software running on top of OpenShift, which is a Red Hat OpenShift, which is a Kubernetes platform. And we put this embedded relational database to handle all of the possible type of workloads that you can even imagine, from the low latency, low cardinality data, meta store, to the highly performant distributing, highly available database with high throughput and low latency data for application middleware, for application integration runtimes, for AI ML workloads, to the point that was discussed earlier today. We already are doing so. And we are extremely happy with the fact that we are using EDB Postgres for the reason that Gabriele alluded to. So it's for its robustness, for its performance, but also for the way how it fits nicely into Kubernetes and the declarative patterns that Kubernetes follows and EDB follows as well. And one of the things which I wanted really to call out specifically that we are really happy and we are really heavily adopting is all of the enhancements in the area of backup restore. So we worked together and validated and provided input, and also had a great partnership, and still have, on the way how to make sure that Postgres is the data is secured, it's from the disaster recovery perspective, online backups, and also what we worked with together, and we are really happy, is the robustness and the resiliency of EDB operator managing Postgres in chaos testing scenarios where Kubernetes worker nodes are crashed or the whole clusters are gone, and therefore the data need to be secured, and whenever the environment is restored or the part of the environment is restored, customers' data are not lost, applications are still up and running, and that's really something which we are really appreciating as the users, let's say, community. Last but not least, one of the features which we are really happy about is the stability, right? The fact that EDB provide LTS, long-term support releases, where there is expected stability of the feature functions, minimizing the risk of any regressions or making sure that the environment is, when deployed on the regulated environments, on the regulated industries, is kept secure and stable. That's really something which stands out, and we are so proud and so happy that we are partnering together.
Great. So that's cool, and you're really using this at a large scale today, right? So maybe just tell our audience, like, the volume and the sizes of what you're doing. I mean, you can see I'm excited about Postgres, and I want to get it into more Kubernetes users' hands, and I want to help folks understand that, this is real, this is big, this is not just a little database under Peter's desk that is now running on Kubernetes, but how big is this?
Well, definitely my desk wouldn't be large enough to put all of those things underneath. So yes, we have more than a dozen, much more than a dozen software offerings where we put EDB into it, which ends up in several hundreds of OpenShift clusters being deployed, 1,000 or more, where number of database instances is measured with several thousands, and holding terabytes of data in a highly available setup, in the HA setup, across all of the possible hybrid cloud environments, from the customer managed data centers running on bare metal, virtualized, on public cloud, OpenShift, containerized software platform. Every single place that you can imagine where OpenShift runs, this is where our customers are deploying IBM software, which is fueled or it's powered or backed up by EDB Postgres database. So the adoption rate is incredible and actually is growing since we started our partnership and collaboration before CloudNativePG open source project was incepted. I think we tripled the adoption rate since then, which is a proof how rock solid the technology is and how we as IBM are happy using it.
So this sounds perfect. Are we done, or are there more things coming?
Well, from our perspective, we are not done. Actually, we are happy where we are, but we are looking forward to the future. So definitely, with the world is changing and the fact that customers are running hybrid cloud environment, then the need of having distributed database topology, which is already being recently announced in EDB 124, it's something which is really promising for us to use, which enables our software running next to the data, next to the customer data, and actually process the data as close to the data source as possible. We are looking forward to improve and make sure that our backup restore story is using all of the recent advancements in the Kubernetes CSI container storage interface layer, where so many storage vendors storage providers and Kubernetes are investing so much on providing the underlying infrastructure. We're looking forward for databases like Postgres to take advantage of it. But I'm pretty sure that those are just the two items on the in a large set of other things that the CloudNativePG together with DOK community is working on. So I'm sure that Gabriele can expand.
Yeah. So Gabriele, tell us a little bit more. And I think for our audience here, also kind of share a little bit that, hey, this is not just EDB. This is now a much bigger project, right? I want to make sure that, I appreciate that people give EDB a lot of credit, but this is not just EDB pushing on it, right? There's a lot of involvement here. So Gabriele, maybe tell us a little bit what's coming next and, how is this whole ecosystem evolving?
Yeah. So basically, this is a complex ecosystem. Okay, that's the beauty of Kubernetes in general, is the modularization, so that you don't need to know everything about Kubernetes, but just focus on the parts that you are responsible of. And although the temptation is for the operator to manage everything, I think that the key thing here is to actually understand if the task you are required to do is something that is the responsibility of your software or can be delegated to an external component in Kubernetes. And I must say that understanding better the storage layer has allowed us to develop less code. Think about all the volume snapshot stuff. I'm the creator of Barman in Postgres, one of the most popular backup and recovery tools in Postgres, in the Postgres ecosystem. We've always wanted to do snapshot backup and recovery. Okay, we were never able to do it because we were missing a standard interface. So we basically, if we wanted to implement snapshot support for each vendor, we had to develop their own interface. In Kubernetes, that was done. The work that the storage team has done is amazing, and Xing has been an incredible leader there to build this standard interface that allowed us to create a volume snapshot resource, and that's it. It's done. We don't have to worry. We can test, we can delegate this to Kubernetes, and it's done. And that's a thing that explains why it is important for us to be part of the Kubernetes ecosystem. Okay, so that we need to leverage what is already there and is tested by millions of users in the world, and then we can rely on other vendors to support. So in terms of new features, I want to quickly add the CNPG-I interface. So it's a pluggable interface that we are building. We're aiming to deliver that in Q4 this year for 125. And it's essentially a way for that enables third parties and users to extend the CloudNativePG operator, for example, by writing backup tools or extending the monitoring capabilities or adding sidecars and applications for any kind of purpose. So that's, in my opinion, the best thing. For Postgres in general, Postgres 17 support, and then support for publication and subscriptions in a declarative manner, which will allow everyone to import any Postgres database in anywhere in the world, Postgres 10 plus, in Kubernetes using logical replication. So with zero cutover time and all declarative. So it's it's all exciting. You can see. And
I think what I really took away here is innovating by writing less code. That's cool, right? I'm a former development manager, and I know that that's not usually how it works, except the really, really smart people. They come up with something that is much shorter, makes good use of the environment, and is like really smart. And I think here you're repeating the same thing that you did initially by saying, no, we're not going to use Patroni or something like that. We're actually going to use the available infrastructure to do the job. And here doing the same thing, getting volume snapshots by not writing everything, but by leveraging what is there. That's a really smart thing. And I think it's a really important, interesting message for me to say, okay, this is what Kubernetes brings us, and this is why it's so interesting and fast moving.
And if I can add one more thing, is that instead of developing in the operator, we're actually participating in the development of the volume group snapshot feature exactly where it should stand. So that's the other incredible story here. And you have people like Xing that, are wonderful mentors, and they are very supportive of this. So for example, Leonardo is actually working with on the Kubernetes storage to add these into Kubernetes rather than in the operator.
I think that's a great story, right? So Melissa, what's next in data on Kubernetes? What's coming?
Well, I think as Xing said at the very beginning, AI/ML has been a hot topic. It's obviously driving a lot of conversation in our industry in general. It's not like AI/ML has been around for a long time. Of course, generative AI is what's driving some of the new conversations in Kubernetes. So there is some work being done around how do we make Kubernetes more ready for AI/ML workloads. There's a new cloud native AI working group as part of CNCF right now, and they produced a white paper earlier this year that outlined, well, here are the pros and cons essentially of running AI/ML workloads on Kubernetes right now, and that's their punch list of things that they want to make better. So if you're interested in that type of thing, it's a good group to be part of. So we're also hearing a lot about DBaaS. There are a lot of people who want to run database as a service on Kubernetes. So both of these topics, in fact, we added as key topics, requesting call for papers for the Data on Kubernetes Day we're running at KubeCon in November. So you'll see core database topics for sure. We have Postgres content. In fact, the talk Gabriele, I believe you gave in Paris, was one of our most well-attended talks. So people love Postgres in Kubernetes. They are hungry for Postgres content. So please come to KubeCon if you're interested in learning how to run Postgres on Kubernetes. So we'll have more of that type of content. And then we have AI/ML content and some DBaaS content. So we hope that if you can come to KubeCon in November in Salt Lake City, you can come to Data on Kubernetes Day, which is the day prior, and you'll get a kind of a sampler of what we're thinking about. There's some beginner content and what's more advanced content, what's coming in the future for Data on Kubernetes. And yes, at the main KubeCon event, we have a panel that we're running about DBaaS and the future of DBaaS on Kubernetes. Gosh, so much stuff about Data on Kubernetes. It's really cool to see how much more content there is at KubeCon around DOK than there used to be. Truly, there was like 0 talks, and there was like maybe 1 or 2 talks a year. So it's really cool to see so much content. So yes, come see our panel.
Yeah, and I think, for me, storage is like an essential thing for databases, storage performance, throughput, reliability. So Xing, maybe just you as the last one here, tell us what is coming. What's the next thing on storage for Kubernetes, especially with a focus on database?
So there is one feature that we are working on. It's called recover from resize failure. So this is, you're talking about hardening Kubernetes, right? So what happens is without this feature, if you do volume expansion, and if that fails because you don't have enough capacity, and there's no way to retry that with a smaller size. Now, this feature has been alpha for some time. We are trying to move it to beta in Kubernetes 1.32 release. So this actually allows you to retry your failed resize attempt. So I think this is actually pretty important. Another somewhat related feature there is a work in progress proposal to support volume expansion for StatefulSets. I remember actually there are some folks from the DOK community who requested this feature as well. So this has been a ask for a long time. There were several attempts for doing this work in the past. So hopefully we can make progress on this one. I think this would be a really good feature to have. And this is a project co-owned by SIG Storage and SIG Apps. And another one, of course, I mentioned the volume group snapshot feature earlier, that Leonardo has been helping us with that. We are trying to move that to beta in 1.32 release. So that would be another very useful feature to have. And then the last one I want to mention is COSI, Container Object Storage Interface. So we know that object storage has been a popular choice in machine learning, and we are trying to make object storage the first-class citizen in Kubernetes. So COSI has been there for some time. It has been in alpha stage for quite some time. Now we are trying to move that to the next stage. So there are a lot of exciting things going on in SIG storage.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I think especially, things like volume snapshots that we make backups of larger databases, backups and recoveries of larger databases so much faster, right, is really, really interesting. And again, I believe it is by just offloading work to an existing layer instead of writing it themselves, right, which is what Gabriele talked about with his barman experiences before. So before we close up, I think there was a really interesting white paper that was just written together with the storage SIG. So Melissa, maybe just point our audience in the right direction, and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was, we worked with the Data on Kubernetes community and the storage SIG to create this databases on Kubernetes white paper to basically help anyone who wants to get started understand the core concepts and ways to get started. So that is published on GitHub. You can find it on the CNCF storage SIG website. It's also on the linked on the Data on Kubernetes site. So if you're just now getting into this and want to figure out an entry point, that's a great place to get started.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody, for this really interesting conversation. I'm excited about it. I hope our audience is going to share the same thing. And thank you again for taking the time for this conversation.